Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number 1447 in a US15A finish, satin nickel, oxidized, also known as antique nickel. This is a ball catch. Ball catch. Not a bullet catch. Bullet catches are ball catches, but when they're really tiny, we call them a bullet catch. This would be a ball catch intended for a typical residential door, hollow core or solid core. And you're going to see these. Well, actually, you're not going to see these. Usually, they're installed in the top rail of a door, although they could be installed in the lock style if you were doing dummy trim on a door, let's say. That is your US15A from Hager. A faithful finish to antique nickel. That's the strike plate. So you're going to drill a hole into the door if you're doing a new installation and simply push fit this in there. What I like to do is get myself a piece of wood with a mallet, and then I like to tap that down into the hole by depressing the spring-loaded roller that's there, and you can see evidence of the spring underneath. If you are doing a new installation, you're going to want to install it over from the edge of the door, if it's a pair of doors, up in the top rail. 3 inches. There's no hard and fast rule. Something over and away. But you're going to want to be mindful in terms of how far over and away do you need to be for a couple of strikes to be mounted together. So let's start with some dimensional properties. Overall width of the strike, or height, 2 1/4. So obviously, half of that's going to be 1 1/8. If you're going to be dealing with something over that's 3 inch from the center, that might be okay. You could obviously change that as needed. Overall width, about 1 3/8 inches. However, these strikes in general, are measured from the center line of the screw hole to the edge of the lip. That's about 15/16. That would be typical, or maybe 7/8. Okay. The outside dimension of this unit is about 1 inch, and you're going to drill a hole that's going to be 15/16, and this spring steel sleeve that's over it, which you could pull off if you wanted to. That's what's going to keep this unit down in the door without it moving at all. Okay. Small amount of exposed area there is going to be in a complementary finish to the nickel. And of course, being a piece of hardware that you're going to see in lots of different applications, it will be available in lots of different finishes, which are, and I'm looking at a monitor here so we can pull up the different finishes. Oh, lots. US10A for an antique bronze. 10R for a matte lacquer antique bronze, US15 satin nickel, US15A antique nickel, US26 polished chrome, 26D satin chrome, US3 polished brass, US4 satin brass, US5 antique brass. So lots of different colors. The tension on the ball bearing is adjustable. If you had a spanner type wrench that you could insert into that hole and turn it clockwise, you'll draw that down and increase that tension. No, you'll decrease the tension because you're going to change the height of the projection. As you rotate it counterclockwise, it'll stick out more, just giving you more material that needs to be pushed down. There's a link below this video to a document called Installation Instructions, which is very handy, and unfortunately they're detailed. Shouldn't be that much information when it comes to a roller latch, but you do need to make sure you get it installed correctly. So let's just quickly go over it. Choose the height at which to mount hardware and mark an X on the door. So they're assuming you're doing a single door. Where do you want it installed? Top of the door down or bottom up? Audit the rest of the doors that are in the space, because you're likely going to install dummy trim in that general area. So you want the height of everything to be the same, and you want where you're pulling on the door to basically be where this is going to be located. Make sure the X is in the center of the door edge before moving on. So in the thickness of the door, if it's 1 3/8, you're going to want to be right in the center of that 1 3/8. But measure the door. An 1 3/8 door is probably closer to 1.32 inch rather than 1.375. An 1 3/4 door is probably 1.71 inch thick, so they're a little difference. Being crucial to that level, maybe being accurate to that level may not be crucial, however you want to be accurate. Number 2, drill a 5/16 hole 1.25 inch deep where the X is marked. Okay. Tap the catch into the hole until the lip sits flush on the door edge. Use a wood block to strike against in order to protect the ball catch. The wood block is going to keep that ball depressed, and then bring your mallet and tap it down. Number 4, line up the strike on the frame so that its center line matches the center line of the ball catch. Make sure the lip portion of the strike faces out. Use the formula below to determine where the strike should be placed. Formula below. Okay, so the formula below basically tells us that we have a Y dimension. I see that. Well, your Y dimension is going to be, okay, it's under the notes section. Dimension Y equals 1/2 of the door thickness plus 1/8 of an inch. So it's going to be X plus the margin between the face of the door and the face of the stop when the door is in the closed position. There is a gap between the face of the stop and the door, and that's the 1/8 of an inch. Yours might be a little less. I suppose it could be a little more, but probably not. But it's going to be right near 1/8 of an inch. So you've got the possibility for some margin there, plus also where you place that X. You know, a 1/16 is not a real big deal, but when you have a 1/16 out here and a 1/16 here, now you got 1/8 of an inch. So the point of the matter is be accurate with both. If it was me, I would literally get the door into the closed position, and then I would try to measure with my caliper exactly what that 1/8 of an inch dimension would be, and then calculate accordingly. The gap between the door and the frame should be at least 1/8 of an inch, meaning from the edge of the door to the frame needs to be at least 1/8 of an inch margin. 1/8 here, 1/8 on the other side, 1/8 at the header. That's because you have to fit all of this, and they're obviously planning on some partial surface mounting, I suppose, of the strike. If mounting on top style of the door and the frame head, place the center line of the catch at 2.5 inch back from the lock edge. So I said 3 inch plus or minus 2.5 inches is what they're saying is where you're going to want to be at in terms of the center line. Go 2.5 this way, go 2.5 that way. That's where you're going to be. If you have some sort of an unusual door construction that you might need to work around, by all means, you know, work around that accordingly. Okay, now, and from what I can tell, they are not calling out for a mortise on the material itself, given the fact, or I should say the strike, given the fact that it's a 1/16 of an inch. They are looking for some preparation for the backside of the countersink or the dimple for the strike and the dimple for the unit itself. They want 2 3/8 holes for clearance, 1/8 of an inch deep in the frame for the 2 countersunk area. Then you're going to do a couple of 3/4 inch diameter holes as indicated for the dimple that's here. It looks like it needs to be, they're not telling us, drill and chisel out this area of the frame 1/8 of an inch deep to accommodate the cup of the strike. It's got an overall height, and I said 2 3/4 inch holes. You know, and your center line is on. If you had a Forstner bit, you drill a, you know, about 1 1/8 inch. You would drill a 3/4 hole 1/8 of an inch deep and go over your new center line to come up with that sort of elongated prep, and then just chisel it flat. Anyway, the bottom line is accommodate this and accommodate this, and you're in good shape. Screws are, of course, included for attaching the strike, and that's what you'll need. Looking at the rest of the notes, 5, mark outline of the strike at the proper center line. Now, when you measure the top of the door, if it's a single door, to the center line of the strike of the ball catch, be mindful that if you measure on the header, on the frame itself, you're going to have to increase that dimension by probably 1/8 of an inch because there's a gap between the top of the door and the header. So be mindful of that. Mortise this area on the frame is 1/16 deep, or until strike sits flush. They do want you to mortise it, in fact. Make the accommodations mentioned earlier. Using the slots in the face of the ball catch, rotate the ball catch housing clockwise to decrease the ball tension, or rotate counterclockwise to increase. So you're just playing with the projection of this, as we talked about earlier. There's also a link below this video to the product catalog, and that's handy because it will allow you to review all or lots of residential hardware from Hager, of which their name is pretty synonymous with. Obviously, their namesake is Hager Hinge, but they sure do a lot more than just hinges. You'll see in that catalog your bolts and your stops, magnetic catches, different variations of ball catches, roller latches, things that will be used for certainly residential applications are going to be found in here. Then other ancillary material, handrail brackets, shelf and rod supports, etc. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Hager products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Hager 1447 ball catch and a US15A antique nickel finish, or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.